Hey everybody, welcome to American Idol Unaired. My name is Bennett Shear, and today we have got another singer that you didn't see, and I'm very excited to introduce our very first season 18 contestant to the show. So please welcome Jeb Vonder.
Thank you for having me.
I know it's been a minute, been like 3 years probably since you went on and filmed Idol. So, I mean, how do you feel? Do you think the memories are still there? Do you think it's going to be like a trip down memory lane? How are you feeling?
It's kind of a trip down memory lane in a lot of ways. I remember a lot of it. Um, it all happened super quickly, especially like things like Hollywood Week, where like we were awake a lot of the time, and it was kind of go 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 the whole week. The filming process happens so rapidly that sometimes it kind of blurs together, and as the time goes on, it kind of. But that's why I like doing things like these interviews where I can like talk about it and kind of relive some of those memories because they're fantastic memories. And even going back, I've actually listened to some episodes of your show, and
Oh yeah, thank you.
it's funny to me. A lot of the people, regardless of season that they were on, all kind of share that same. There's a lot of through lines that people say the same kind of things, and it rings true. It really does.
I'm really excited to get to know you, man. So it'd be great if you could just give us that introduction that we didn't get to see from your time on Idol.
Absolutely. I'm Jeb Bonnerbergy. I'm from Mississippi. My background in music comes a lot from my grandfather. So my grandfather's been playing since he was 9, and he's had a guitar in my hand since I was probably 2 or 3 years old. And it's just been something we've shared. And as time has gone by, I've taken more formal courses, my associate's degrees in music. I really fell in love with the process of making music, and I grew up doing a lot of musical theater too. My parents are both teachers. My dad's a theater teacher, and my mom's an English teacher. So um, loved writing, creating, being surrounded by theater and a lot of musical theater. That was something that came up on the show. They immediately kind of picked that out from my background is my musical theater thing, and I've always been around the arts. I'm incredibly passionate about the arts, and so it's not even, I wouldn't consider it a job or anything. I may do it for work, but at the end of the day, it's just something that I'd be doing it anyway. So I'm really lucky to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, the whole cliche of if you find someone you love, you never work a day in your life definitely reigns true.
100% true.
Now, obviously, with musical theater, it's performing, entertaining, being a character. But as far as the going back to being 2 years old and having your grandfather playing music, I'm curious about his style and his influences. If you know anything that you want to share about his musical history, because that probably had an influence a little bit on what you started to do.
Absolutely. I mean, I was surrounded by good music. I mean, that's what I like to say is it influenced me in the way that I was always listening to music. I would go to his band jobs. He plays in a lot of classic rock, and he has a blues trio that he plays in, and so growing up watching him play with his bands and just being constantly surrounded by a lot of rock from the 60s and 70s, and then a lot of classic blues dating back even further than that. But but the soundtrack to my childhood was following him around, and stuff like Eric Clapton and Cream, and Muddy Waters, and just I look back and I hear Crossroads a lot in my childhood memories when we would play Crossroads. That's one that sticks out. That kind of stuff, yeah. And it definitely did have an influence. My style of playing is a little different, but I think my appreciation for different styles of music comes from that.
I know you said that your style kind of evolved from maybe what your grandfather played or what he had you listen to and what you started out with. So how would you say that you changed your music and what you kind of started listening to and eventually playing?
It's a great question. I think I discovered songwriting. I think that was the biggest thing for me, and kind of um, the way I started with music was playing a lot of like covers, playing in cover bands, um, of all different kind of styles, just because I enjoyed playing and I enjoyed being in bands. And then when I started to kind of think about the kind of music I wanted to make and the kind of music that I like to sing and the kind of music that represented how I felt, I fell in love with writers like Ryan Adams. Um, I really love Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, REM. So it kind of evolved from that classic rock kind of, maybe a gateway kind of bridge from Tom Petty to kind of some of these more alternate, like Jason Isbell. I love his writing style. And it kind of devolved, not devolved necessarily, but branched off into a lot of different places. just a greater appreciation of like great songwriters and great lyricists. And I think when that happened, I found a lot of songwriters that have a very distinct voice. I play a lot more acoustic stuff, and I think that stems from just how much I've fallen in love with people like Tyler Childers and like I said, Ryan Adams. People that utilize the story and the guitar and the voice, and it's simple, but it gets the point home.
You may have answered my next question, which is there any common thread between some of these artists that you mentioned as far as what appeals to you about them, whether it be the words that they write or their sound?
It's storytelling. I think the greatest thing that you can do as an artist is tell a story, because if you tell a story, then even if it's just super personal to you, you might find that it resonates with a lot of people, and I think you can touch a lot of people that way. And I think that you can when you say something that means a lot to you, it might mean a lot to a lot of other people, and then they connect with it, and you share that. And I think music's meant to be shared in that way.
Absolutely. As far as the art form of songwriting, for some people it's about telling that story within a single, or it may be an entire album, or perhaps an artist looks to kind of share an entire life story throughout all of their bodies of work. But, as I think about what it takes to write a song, and I don't know how many you've written, but do you find that it's more challenging to convey a message in a shorter period of time, talking about like a 3 minute song as opposed to, say, a novel or a movie? Or do you like the idea of being able to kind of, have like this bite-sized piece of art with still that same message?
I never really thought of it like that. That's a hang on, I'm trying to collect my thoughts. I write with a co-writer, so I think that it's the way that that kind of helps with writing songs. I do think there's something really freeing about having that little 3 minute window to kind of especially with the way that I write songs. So the way that I like to write songs is I'll just kind of vomit the words out, and then my co-writers, my cousin Brock and I, he'll help me kind of refine things down. So I do kind of write in that way where it's a lot of words, and it's very much it's just it's a lot all at once, and then we kind of dial it back and then put it in a box.
Yeah. First of all, I love that how family oriented your musical career is, because the fact that it
Absolutely.
started with your grandfather and you're working with your cousin, I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
I've always been very family oriented. Every like my family is incredibly tight knit, and that's something that it's I mean it's always been a part of what I do, is a very family oriented person. And so the fact that I'm able to share something that I really love with them all, I think the craziest thing is being able to share that with my family, because they mean a lot to me. So
Yeah. Do you and Brock have a specific process, do you think? I know you mentioned vomiting the words, but do you kind of team up and do specific things, or do you kind of go back and forth where one person's writing, one person's doing melody, lyrics, you know?
what's really crazy about Brock is he doesn't play any instruments.
Oh,
So the way that our writing process kind of starts is I'll come to him with a hook, or maybe with a chord, like a very small section of the song, or I'll have maybe sometimes I'll come to him and I'll have the entire musical arrangement of it, but I have no words. And then he and I will sit down together, and primarily either one of us will come to the table with a concept, or we sit down together and kind of snowball that concept. And then slowly it kind of starts to take shape. I think the longest time it's ever taken us to write a song has been like about a month, and then the shortest amount of time has been under 2 hours. So it just kind of it depends on how, but it's not necessarily a uniform process in that way. But normally I take care of the actual music, and then we'll meet together on a concept, and he'll kind of help me put my feelings and my thoughts into words. But I think it gives way to a really like it's a very vulnerable, very emotional type writing process, because a lot of it comes from purely feelings based to me, and then I'll voice those feelings, and he'll voice his feelings, and it'll kind of take its shape. We write the words based on very very visceral things. So that's a unique thing about our process, I think.
and how long have you guys been writing together?
I actually remember distinctly it being when I got home. I went to LA for Hollywood Week, and I met a lot. I had wanted for a long time to write. I had tried to write by myself. Um, and it took me going to LA and being surrounded by some of these other contestants that were these amazing songwriters, and just in picking their brain and asking them, about their process, about what worked for them, how they got their start. And a lot of them talked about utilizing co-writers. And so when I came home, I was talking about how badly I wanted to write songs, and Brock said, "Well, why don't we try to write a song together?" And it just worked. It worked, and uh, I had no idea before we started that it would blossom into this. But we wrote an album together, and I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of it, and I guess you could say it probably never would have happened without Idol. I don't know for sure, but I'm very thankful for that, because getting to talk to all those people in that room and just being surrounded by writers, and hearing them tell me about how they utilize co-writers, and I found mine.
Well, that's so cool because the fact that this is already after your American Idol experience, I mean, I would have expected, honestly, that you guys would have been together longer because to have established such a strong, working dynamic and to sort of just have something so established, like it's really cool that, I mean, really, if you think about it, it's kind of a short time period. I mean, it was only like 2 years ago that this started, and you guys have been working together on it, and to think that essentially you kind of had all these new perspectives after American Idol maybe you didn't have before you went on the show.
I definitely feel like it did open my eyes. Um, when I went to Savannah for the first audition, I remember one of the critiques Katie gave me was that I didn't seem really sure of myself and really confident in what I was doing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think part of that was because I hadn't ever really done that before. Um, I had never, I never fronted my own band. I had never performed my own songs. I had played in other bands. I'd played guitar. I'd done backing vocals, and I was happy doing that. And I'd also done like musical theater and things like that. But I think that's the difference, is when you do musical theater and things like that, like you're playing a character.
Yeah.
It's a whole different ball game when you're up there by yourself, and it's all on you, and you have to be yourself. And so yeah, it did open my eyes to a lot of new perspectives, and I haven't been doing it for long, but once I started, I fell in love and knew that this is what I wanted to continue doing.
Yeah, I feel like I've recorded a lot of interviews recently with contestants who have a theater background, and it's like it's a whole nother journey. You can be on stage, but it's different when you're that solo artist and you're revealing yourself and you're not playing somebody else, and that it makes such a huge difference.
It really does. I have no problem being on stage, but it's a lot harder when you realize that the people aren't looking at the character you're playing. They're looking at you,
Yeah.
and they're really looking at you. They're looking at you intently, and
Mm-hmm.
it's odd being that vulnerable. And now
Mm-hmm.
that I've done it for a longer period of time, like now that it's been 2.5, 3 years of me fronting my own band and writing my own songs and performing them, I'm a lot more comfortable being vulnerable, but it took a long time to get there. And I didn't expect that, because like you said, like I've been on stage my whole life. I didn't think it would be that hard. And then I made the transition, and it is a completely different world.
Well, let's go back to the beginning of American Idol because, as we just established, I mean, you were a different artist back then. In fact, you probably didn't even fully know who you were as an artist back then. So, you talk about how scary it is to get on the stage as yourself, as that artist, and somebody's looking at you. That's what you had to do for your first audition. And as far as the audition goes, just technically speaking, we're kind of entering a new realm of how the show worked because all these interviews taking place with contestants season 1920 where they had to kind of reform their audition process because of COVID with the Idol Across America tour. But when you auditioned, it was right before the pandemic, and if I'm correct, is that when they had the bus tour? Were you going to a bus or was it online somehow?
So my journey started, they were doing the bus tour. My journey in particular started, um, there are a lot of casinos where I'm from, and one of them happened to host an affiliate contest
Uh huh.
through our local ABC affiliate. And so I left work early one day, and I saw an ad on Facebook, and I said, I'm gonna go try, because I had a couple buddies that were trying out for it was Gulf Coast Idol, which
Mm-hmm.
is the affiliate contest. And so I went and I auditioned, and I said, you know what, that wasn't my best work. I definitely feel like I left a lot to be desired, but I tried. I put myself out there. Well, the next week they came on to the news at 6, and I made the top 10.
Wow.
And they called me and they told me that we were going to do the finals night, and they were gonna broadcast on the news station. And so I thought, wow, that's cool. I didn't think much of it. I didn't think it was going to go any further than that. So I went, I performed, I did 2 songs, ripped my pants mid song, second song of the night. Thought that that was for sure going to get me done. Like I was finished at that point, and I won. They said my name, and I
Wow.
got I got the ticket. I got a silver ticket. So I got to go to Savannah, Georgia. That's where I auditioned. And it was, oh my God, it was an incredible group in Savannah. And I flew in. I did some producer auditions at the hotel in Savannah. Um, and then finally, it was time for me to go to the judges. And I remember, I remember walking in, and I had this really surreal moment. I thought it was fake, because you watch it on TV, and then you're standing in that room, and the judges just look perfect. The lighting, the makeup, everything, they're just perfect. And I found myself standing there, and I had no idea how I got there, because and I think that's what made the journey so fun with Idol was I just kind of took it day by day, thing by thing. It was not an end goal in mind. It was, hey, this is I get to go to Georgia and I get to sing for some producers. And then it was, hey, I'm in Georgia and I'm going to get to sing for, Katy Perry, Luke Bryan, and Lionel Richie. So every new thing was like a whole brand new experience, and it was awesome.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to talk about the auditions, but just hearing you say that, I can't imagine how you're gonna feel, or you were there, but once we talk about Hollywood Week, because that's just like a whole nother level, man. I mean, you're talking like 3 times the people, to be chosen from all these thousands of people that have auditioned to make it to Hollywood Week. I mean, every round must have just continued to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here.
Absolutely. And that I think that was the best thing about it was I never felt bad. I never was scared. Well, I shouldn't say. I was never that scared to go home, because I had already I had already gotten this opportunity that not a lot of people get. And
Right.
so I think that's what kind of kept. I mean, I definitely had moments where I was really nervous. I mean, you're naturally going to be really nervous, but I think what kept me holding it together and as calm as I could possibly be in that situation was was knowing that, like, you've already accomplished something that so many people never get to experience in their life. Like, and I watched people perform that were some of the greatest artists I've ever seen in my life, and
Hmm.
and they got sent home.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind to even be included in the group of people that I was included in was an honor. I guess
Yeah.
is the way that I would phrase. Like, everyone was so good,
Yeah.
and to be surrounded by that level of talent makes you push yourself. I think. I think it makes you elevate your performance. Um, and yeah, I never looked at it. I never looked at it as like a scary thing. It was more of a, wow, look what you get to do. Look what you
Yeah.
get to do.
Again, it was different back then, and I'm so used to hearing how it worked with Idol Across America. It's funny because you almost think about like one, I guess, flip side of sort of the Zoom era is things are a lot easier nowadays because like you'd never even have to leave your house to do so many of the auditions. But it's just funny to think about the fact that people had to go all the way to this venue in, a state far away to audition. So obviously, if you make the judges, you're there for a reason. But even just doing the producer auditions, now people just do it over Zoom. It's casual. But for you, you had to go in person. Imagine in a hotel to audition in front of the producers. So I'm curious what the layout was like because again, this is all new to me. Um, can you kind of describe what it was like when you got there and sort of the setup that you had as you were going to audition for the producers?
Yeah. So my experience was a little different with the silver ticket. I got to skip the preliminary round of auditioning from like the cattle call line.
Right.
Um, there was a group of about 7 of us, and we went upstairs to one of the conference rooms. They were filming it. I forget what hotel it is in Savannah, but it's like a really big, nice hotel. And they had all these like ballrooms and conference rooms rented out. And so We went and they sat all of us in a line outside this hotel room, and they said, "All right, there are some producers in there. Uh, be prepared to sing." And they kind of all put us through once, and I don't remember which producers were in there, but and they probably have changed by now. It's been a while, but I did that performance, and then I went and sat back outside, and then uh, they came and they asked three people to follow them, and then they were gone for 5 minutes, and we thought that meant that they were going to see the judges, and we were done. Then the producer that took them came back and said, "All right, you guys follow us." And we walked past, and I saw the three people crying.
Oh,
So obviously, it had gone the complete opposite way that I thought it had gone. So that was that first round of producer auditions. Then we went to another conference room, and I know we've talked about it on the show. Megan, the showrunner, she was there, and I remember walking into that room, and honestly, that might have been more nerve wracking than the judges' auditions for different
mm,
reasons. Because with the judges' auditions, it's a huge room, and the lights are on, and the cameras are in your face, and so you kind of just you get tunnel vision, and you just focus on like, I just got to get through this song. In the hotel room with Megan and some of the other executive producers and things, it's a small room. It's a tiny room, and you can see them. They're right there, and you can hear them, and you can feel them react to what you're doing very directly, um, which is great. I mean, in terms of like getting that input, if you're doing a great job, it's great. If you're not doing a great job, it's very easy to tell that you're not doing a great job. And I'm very fortunate. They liked what I had to offer. They asked me some questions, and then they sent me to the judges. And yeah.
I'm trying to think what the schedule must be then. So you audition for the producers, and then is that are the judges' auditions going on the same day, or you have to wait longer before they start filming with Katie, Luke, and Lionel?
So I was very fortunate. I was able to see the judges that day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had started with the first, so there was like producer auditions, executive producer auditions, and then judges auditions. Was how they did it in my process.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started. I remember I got to the hotel at about 7 in the morning. I didn't audition for the judges till about 4 p.m. And there were other contestants that did go through the same process as I did with going directly to the producer auditions. They also had to wait till the next day to audition. I just
Mm-hmm.
happened to be really fortunate in that I got to audition that day.
Uh-huh. Yes.
But I mean, it was an all day affair. I had to spend the next day doing B-roll and filming some other things like filming reactions, which was funny to be filming reactions the day after. But uh, my actual audition process took one day. Yeah.
Wow. And it probably adds to how it all felt so like unreal. Again, the fact that you sort of just on a whim went for this affiliate contest and then got named the winner for that, and then you arrive at this hotel, and the fact that all happened so quickly. Again, you must have just been not only grateful but surprised in a good way that it's all real.
It was a week and a half turnaround between the affiliate contest and actually standing in Georgia, and it was a whirlwind. And I don't think I had the time to like think about the gravity of the situation, which was good because I didn't have the time to build it up in my head and freak myself out. But yeah, I took everything as it came, and I was just so lucky. It didn't make sense. I was like, I just auditioned for this little thing at a local casino, and now I'm in front of Lionel Richie, and it all happened in the span of a week.
Wow. So, given that you were kind of in and out of the hotel so fast for the auditions, did you have a chance to really get to know any of the other contestants?
Um, I had met the people that I had kind of been around all day in the holding rooms and things like that. Stefan Sylvester, I don't remember if they aired him. Alyssa Fair, who ended up being my duet partner. Um, I met Cameron Lee Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she ended up she has one of the best voices I've ever heard in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of a smaller group of us that ended up just everybody's running everywhere. the producers would just come grab you during the day and be like, "Hey, we need to film this with you," or "Hey, can we get an interview with you?" So when I found the time to meet people, I didn't really get to know anybody till a little later on, when there was a little bit more downtime with being surrounded by the other contestants. But those were the primary people I met that day.
Before you knew it, you were in front of the judges. I mean, it was all happening so fast, and it was your moment. You know, you walked in that room, there you were in front of Luke Bryan, Katy Perry, and Lionel Richie. At which point, you're probably just like, "Oh my God!" Like you said, that's Lionel Richie. And sounds like was he maybe one of your biggest inspirations among the three of them?
I think they all three offer a different thing.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think that Katie came about in a different industry than Lionel maybe started out in. And I think the level of pop superstardom that Katie has attained is like mega, mega super pop star. So it's like I mean, she has that wisdom. And not only did Lionel come up in a different industry, but he just has that wisdom from being in the industry, watching it evolve, watching it change, being able to give that kind of advice. And then Luke really had a lot of organic beginnings, I would say, and came from a very similar kind of um, place where I was at, being from the South, and just kind of building your own way up through the industry. So he kind of had that kind of grassroots type, you know. He was he I, and that's what's funny. He actually gave me a no in my audition, but ended up giving me some of the best advice later on.
Uh huh.
Um, so yeah, that would be. I mean, I would say Lionel Richie obviously just he's a legend.
Yeah.
He's a legend. So obviously huge inspiration to me. But all three of them were amazing in their own right, and it was an honor to be in the room with them.
Now, when you first walked in, do you remember any of the dialogue, sort of bantery small talk that went on, or did it kind of get right to the singing?
Um, I remember them making a comment about my musical theater background. Like I said, I remember them saying like they had mentioned maybe somebody else earlier in the day had done a musical theater selection. They were tired of hearing musical theater songs,
Oh,
uh, which is great because I didn't end up doing anything remotely similar.
yeah.
But I remember that happening, and I got really nervous. But I was so nervous when I walked in that room. I just kind of walked to the mark. I remember one of the producers telling me before I walked through the door, they were like, "Your mark is gonna be right there in the middle. Hit your mark." And I just walked. I made a beeline right there, parked it, and I just waited for them to tell me to sing. And I did two songs, and it was kind of quiet for a second. I sang "You Somebody" by Kings of Leon, and then I sang "Someone You Loved" by Louis Capaldi. And that was a suggestion I got from one of the producers in the producer audition, because the original song that I had sang had not actually, they didn't have the rights to it. It wouldn't clear TV. So they recommended I pick another song. Um, and I was really glad I picked that one because the judges responded really well to that choice.
Can I ask what the song was that didn't get cleared?
Mr. Brightside by the Killers.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
I went in there with that one, and it didn't clear. So they asked me if I would consider picking another song, and so that was one that I knew that was on the list, and so that's what I went with.
Cool. I'd love to hear about the feedback from both songs as much as you might remember.
I remember them saying that it didn't feel like I knew who I was, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really valid critique because at the time I didn't really know who I was. Um, I know Luke had expressed concerns, and Katie had kind of backed him up a little bit, that it just seemed like I was very unsure of myself, and that it seemed like maybe it might serve me well to maybe uh, come back later when I had gotten a little bit more comfortable performing. And
Mm-hmm.
that, I mean, like I said, that was completely valid, um, because at the time, like like I said, I had never done anything remotely similar to that. The only similar experience was about a week and a half before, when I was on the stage doing the affiliate contest. So I totally get where they were coming from. Uh, But I just kind of told them, I said, this is what I love to do. If you're willing to take a chance on me, I promise you won't regret it. And Lionel gave me a yes, Luke gave me a no, and it came down to Katie. And Katie tried to string me along like she was going to give me a no, and then she said, "But yes."
Hmm.
And I remember I almost passed out. Like it was the feeling of relief after hearing them. Even though they're valid critiques, it's not fun to necessarily hear them in the moment. Uh, so to get that yes after feeling like I was definitely not in good standing was incredible.
You mentioned the piece of advice that Luke gave you. Was that in the audition or was that going to come later in the competition?
That was in Hollywood Week. There was
Uh
a group
huh.
of us that he gave a little bit of advice to in between filming in Hollywood Week.
Hmm. Yeah, well, we're definitely about to get to Hollywood Week, so I'd love to hear about it. But first of all, had you watched American Idol a lot before being on the show?
I had watched a lot of the earlier seasons. Like I remember being a little kid and watching it in my living room. Um, I kind of watched it on and off. I had never been like a super fan of the show. I liked the show. Um, my dad was really into the show. I remember my dad used to watch it a lot. So I have a lot of memories as a little kid of like coming and sitting in the living room and watching it with my dad, or coming in the house and seeing him watching it. So in that capacity, yeah. Uh, and it was a whole like it was crazy to be on the show, to
Yeah.
see behind the curtain and see how that show that you watch as a little kid kind of works.
Part of why I'm wondering that is because, and again, I don't know how familiar you were with just sort of the structure of the show, but Hollywood Week was always, like significant for the different parts where it starts out with the people coming out on the lines and then they have the group round. But your season is when they change things up. And
Yes.
the first round wasn't that different other than calling it the genre challenge and you having to pick a genre. But then duets, which we'll talk about in a little bit, was different in the sense that instead of working with a few people, you're only working with one person. And so I'm just kind of wondering how much you knew about the show before, and if them changing things up kind of threw you for a loop at all, or if it was kind of not that big a deal.
So there was a little bit of time in between my audition in Georgia and actually going to LA. And I remember I was watching Hollywood Weeks past like game tape. Like I remember going and watching these episodes just to try to see maybe what was in store. Um, and not that I wasn't familiar with the concept, but just to make sure it was fresh in my brain, because I wanted to be as on my A game as possible. And so when we got there, and I remember everybody was kind of they told us on the night that we all got there. They kind of the Megan came down and some of the other producers and the director for the Hollywood Week episodes came down and was like, things are going to be a little different this year. And everybody kind of sat there for a second and we were all like, but different how? And they never told us. And so we were just on edge. We were just waiting. We were waiting to find out. And yeah, then the genre challenge happened. And I had a lot of trouble figuring out what exactly I wanted to put, like what genre I wanted to put myself in. Um, and I think to add on to that, it's like I think that's where some people, everybody's so good at that level that the smallest mistake will sometimes be the thing that sends you home. I think that honestly is normally what sends people home is just maybe the smallest little mistake that you're not even thinking about. Not even a mistake, but just the choice that you make in the moment thinking it's the right choice, and then it ends up being your undoing. So I remember that element of it, not knowing what genre to choose, um, and seeing people also be torn, and then they end up going home because of it.
So, what genre did you end up choosing?
I ended up choosing pop because I felt like the people that were in that group with me um, had a lot of similar vocal style to me, and I felt like it would be much easier um, to pick a song that stayed in that genre, even if it meant doing my own thing with it.
Do you remember any of the other contestants who you were with in your line?
I remember standing up there in the line. I think Evan Kariga might have been in my line. I don't know if anybody that aired was in my line. I don't know if my I don't think my line had anybody that aired. Um, Dylan James might have been in my line. I think that might have been when I met Dylan. Because I remember meeting Dylan. Dylan and I were roommates in Hawaii. He and I got close later on, but I think that might have been when I met Dylan. So I will say that thinking that maybe he might have been in my line.
Before we talk about your genre challenge performance, did you get a chance to sit in the audience and watch a lot of other performances for that round?
I did, yeah.
And any standouts that you remember?
Oh, Arthur Gunn. Arthur Gunn for sure. I remember hearing Arthur's voice for the first time, and he had that just like that rasp, and his presence was so commanding. Everybody in that moment, like when we saw Arthur, he owned it. Like he walked in like he owned the place, and he had the voice to match. Man, he had like a huge voice. That first challenge, it was such a large group of us that they broke it down between 2 days. So I remember I didn't perform at all the first day. I had a day to kind of sit and watch, which was great. But then that second day came and it was showtime. And I remember talking to some of the people who went day one. They were really lucky that they went day one. They felt really lucky because they got theirs over with. So they could sit back the second day and they knew they were safe. They were safe for now. And I kind of had the opposite where the first day I tried to turn my brain off, enjoy the performances, sit in the audience, listen to what the judges were saying after people performed. I think that was the biggest one was listening to what the judges had to say because a lot of the time they were saying a lot of the same things. And I think they were trying to give people an insight into what they were looking for. Um, so yeah, it was a free concert, and then you realized you were gonna have to get up there, and it got kind of scary.
Do you have any recollection of the judges specifying what they might have been looking for?
The biggest thing that they kept repeating is that sometimes less is more. I remember that being like a really big, not even just in the genre challenge, but throughout Hollywood Week was, hey, serve the song. Sometimes, sometimes less is more. Sometimes you don't. You get in a situation where you're on American Idol and you want to set yourself apart, and people were doing vocal acrobatics, and it was beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes the simplicity. I think that's what they were trying to say was keep it simple and don't try to do don't do more than what's needed because sometimes it ends up hurting you more than it's helping you.
It makes a lot of sense. So it's not about them looking for a specific kind of artist. It's more about just, if anything, they want to kind of see you as you are. They want to see you guys be yourselves. And I think a lot of times people doing too much comes from not maybe not sticking enough to who they are as an artist and just trying to be more than what they already are. Like trying to act more extreme or more, like you said, the vocal acrobatics are just trying to add on to what's already great.
And that's what I feel like was great about American Idol. I was really nervous going into it. I didn't know what to expect. They're incredibly artist friendly, I think. Um, and I think that they care, and I think that they want to see the real you.
Yeah.
I talked to some people that had done some other type of shows and things like that, where maybe the show had told them what they wanted to see from them, and kind of told them what to do and how to be on camera and on stage. And I never felt that pressure at Idol. And I think quite the opposite. Actually, I felt like people were very encouraged to be themselves and to do their thing. It wasn't about. It's not just about crazy vocal talent. And I think that's what was cool about that experience was everybody's a good singer at that level. You wouldn't be there if you weren't a good singer. It's not just about being a good vocalist. You have to be personable. You have to work well with other people, which I think comes into play in the other challenges, and be adaptable and be be really open. And as long as you do that, then you'll be successful. It's not just about your vocal talent because everybody's a talented singer.
I think that you went on the show at a perfect time, and I think this show was really kind of at a point in its history that it really became a revelation where people were really starting to recognize American Idol again because unlike The Voice or some of these other shows that have been a little bit more new, American Idol's been on since 2002, got canceled, and I think a lot of people kind of had this idea that it wasn't as relevant. But when they brought it back, and I think this surprised a lot of people, it really rose to another level with the artists that it was bringing in. And particularly the season before you with Alejandro, I don't know if you watched, but this guy who came in second place, he changed the game.
He actually came in LA.
Oh yeah?
I actually got to meet Alejandro.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
We were filming. It was right before Duets,
Uh-huh.
and I saw a bunch of cameras come in into the holding room, and I saw them walking in front of somebody, and I was like, "Oh, that's somebody important." And it was Alejandro. And he came and he sat down, and everybody kind of pulled around him, and it was crazy. Everybody kind of flocked to him, and
Yeah.
he just kind of told us about his experience and said that having to come out of your shell to do something like Idol is crazy, especially for him because I think uh, but he's such a distinct artist. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think that like you said, like the show attracting that kind of artist is like I think that's the only reason the show can get artists like that is because they allow him to be himself. And that's kind of what he was saying is like be yourself, be your own artist. It's not about marketing yourself. It's about being you. And then, you know, just be the best artist that you can be individually.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think that the show had somebody who got people that excited, in my opinion, since Philip Phillips, who was on in 2012. And actually, fun fact about Megan, who's actually, I mean, I think there was another executive producer, Trish Kinane, who I think was the main showrunner when you were on the show. And then now Megan's the sole showrunner. But I read an interview with Megan back when she was kind of working her way up when Philip was auditioning. Uh, the producers at the time didn't want him to audition with a guitar, but she convinced him, no, let this guy. She was I think a co-executive producer, so she was kind of on the sidelines, not up the top. But she saw through this guy. She's like, you got to let Philip Phillips sing with a guitar. It's not going to read as well. At the time, I think the rule was that a singer has to sing a solo a cappella, so they had him do that. And then she's like, let him sing a second song because it's not going to read as well to the viewers if you don't let him play with his guitar. And then he went on and he won the show, had that song home and everything. And then Alejandro, all these years later, had his kind of own thing going on, with his original music. And then the following year, the people that did air that season, your season, I think about Julia Gargano, I think about Dylan James, I think about Johnny West, all people you probably got to witness, changing the game yet again,
Johnny
raising the
West,
bar.
Johnny West is one of the best people I've ever met in my life. Like that, and Johnny West, the guy that you see on TV, is the dude off camera.
He's
Like
so chill.
he he like he actually was sitting next to me in Hawaii when I got voted off.
Uh huh.
And I remember before I went up there, I was so nervous. I kind of knew what was gonna happen. And Johnny put his hand on my shoulder, and he was like, "Dude," he's like, "This is a small stepping stone in the journey of your life." He was like, don't get worked up, because he just is this cool, calm, collected guy, and with this crazy talent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Wow.
he is the definition of an artist, man. He's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, I know I got kind of off track. I know we were talking about genre challenge, and I want to know what song you sang for that round.
I did Bruises by Louis Capaldi. I knew that Someone You Loved had worked with the judges. They had responded well to it, so when I knew that was an option, that's what I went with.
After that round, I'm pretty sure it's like you don't get to find out right away. They edit it, but you probably got to go back and then wait and then come back a couple hours later before you find out if you
Yeah.
had made it.
It had been a few hours. You had a lot of time to sit there and think about your performance. Actually, all of so they waited till every single performer was done for the day.
Oh wow.
So all your day one people had already found out, but all the day two people had to wait until the end of the day, and then
Uh-huh.
they brought us all out.
And at this point, you still didn't know what was coming for the duet round, right? You still didn't know that change was coming.
We thought it was groups.
Right.
We were all certain it was going to be groups, and then they were
Right.
like, "Oh, remember how we said things are going to be different?" We're like, "Oh, there's more."
Yeah.
And yeah, they were like duets, and Alyssa Fair came up behind me and she grabbed my arm and she said, "You're my duet partner." And I didn't even have to go look. I just didn't. Everybody was kind of running off trying to find their people, and she grabbed my arm and she goes, "We're duet partners." And I said, "Okay." She was at my audition in Savannah. I talked to her in line, and then I didn't know if I'd ever see her again. I didn't think anything about it, and then I bumped into her in LA. Uh, Even then, I hadn't really talked much to her, kind of in passing at catering or in the holding room. But um, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that she made the decision to grab my arm and tell me we were duet partners, because her voice is so powerful. She's one of those people like tiny person, huge voice. And it was her idea to pick "Stay" by Rihanna and Mickey Echo. She chose a song, she chose a duet, and then it was time to sit down and make the arrangement. And um, I was kind of worried when we did the arrangement, because I've looked back on cell phone videos that I have of us rehearsing. Um, because her voice is so powerful, I was so worried. I was like, I'm not gonna make it through. And it's not that I was doing poorly, or that she like it just she was so it wasn't even intentional. She just was so her voice was so huge that I was scared I was gonna get drowned out. So the fact that I made it through that round was unbelievable. But we stayed up. We found out who was making it through the genre challenge at about 9 p.m. We went back to the hotel at about 10:30. They told us that it was a duet challenge. Pick our partners and pick a song. And we performed the next day at 11 a.m.
Wow.
So we rehearsed through the night.
Mm.
And I remember showing up and being pretty delirious from lack of sleep at that point. People that had the most sleep were probably the people who had maybe an hour and a half. That's the longest amount I think people slept during Hollywood Week. That first night, I slept that first night, and that was it.
Yeah.
That was it that whole week, and it does affect you.
I feel like even though it was a little intimidating singing with somebody who had such a big voice, it probably was relieving to be with somebody that you knew, or at least kind of knew from the auditions. I mean, that's like a good strategy. Obviously, she was the one who made the move, but like she probably was thinking the same thing. I want to go with somebody who I know, obviously who's talented, but also you have to have teamwork. I mean, aside from how talented somebody is, it's about how can we work. I mean, we have a short amount of time to be good collaborators.
I think that was the biggest thing for us, and that the first conversation we had when we sat down to actually start rehearsing is we sat down and we were like, we need. We started having conversations and we were like, we need to be as comfortable as possible with one another because it's going to show up on stage. We don't have time to build chemistry reads. I think chemistry reads when you're on stage, and Idol is no exception. So it was important for us to kind of get to know each other and have that chemistry so that it read. And that was actually one of the bits of feedback that we got from Katie. Katie said we were like Gaga and Bradley Cooper in A Star Is Born. Like
Wow.
we took the time. We took the time. We may have did a little bit of choreography. It might have been a little staged. It might have had a little bit of extra, but
Pizzazz.
not not staged in the way that our actual friendship. Like I'm still good friends with Alyssa to this day, um, and I admire her as a singer and as a songwriter. But yeah, I mean we had choreography. Like we had like blocking. We were gonna come in at the end of the performance and sing to each other. But that was important. We wanted to have a nice cohesive performance. We thought chemistry, because like I said, everybody's a good singer. So what makes you different than anybody else that's up there singing?
Right. But impressive also that, you could have decided that in the short amount of time that you had, you need to just focus on the voice, but you decided, nope, there's so much more than that, which is true. I mean, the reality is, if you want to make it in this business, it's about more than just the voice. Hence why you're on American Idol and not a different
Well,
show.
there's always going to be a reason that people come see a live show instead of just listening to the album all the time. And especially like we were talking earlier about like the vulnerability and making somebody feel something. How do you make somebody feel something if you're not portraying anything when you sing?
Right.
So feeling something, that's like my biggest thing. I think it comes from being from musical theater. You got to feel something when you sing, because if you don't feel anything, then how is anybody else going to feel something?
Right.
So it was really important to both of us to put a lot of feeling and a lot of chemistry into what we were doing, and to make it seem like we had known each other for longer than 25 hours tops.
Right. So did you have time like with vocal coaches at all, or any help outside of just you
Yes.
two?
Fred, that does the accompaniment, he was our accompanist, and they had rooms set up. I don't know how the process goes in other seasons. We were at a hotel that had the ballrooms again. So they had the ballrooms split up. And so some of the smaller ballrooms had the dividers in them to break them into smaller rooms. And so there were 3 vocal coaches. Um, you could choose to utilize them or not,
Mm.
which was interesting. Everybody did utilize them, and I think that's kind of a given. Um, but I mean, because the resource was there, so everybody made it a priority to kind of work with them, and it was nice to hear feedback on. Fred gave feedback on the actual arrangement that we did of it. The vocal coach confirmed my fear that maybe I was going to get a little washed out because of how strong her voice was. So then we kind of spent the time after that working on how to bring my voice a little bit more to the front. Not
Hmm.
necessarily dial her back because it's her performance,
Yeah.
but we kind of worked on pushing me a little bit forward in the
Hmm.
mix. The extent of working with the vocal coaches was not fundamentally changing anything that we had done, but just kind of giving us, hey, this is how you make it better.
So I'd say barely any sleep. That's an understatement. You go on, you're on early, which frankly I gotta imagine was kind of a relief after having experienced genre challenge where you're like sitting through a whole day and then another day. Did you like getting to go early?
Yes and no. It was nice to just go ahead and get the performance knocked out. That felt great. Because at a certain point you realize there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's not about your talent at that point. It's just about that challenge.
Hmm.
Um, that was something that took me a second in Hollywood Week to figure out. But once I figured it out, it put me at ease a lot more. Um, there were other things that I stressed about, but I remember like having that come to Jesus moment where I was like, you know what? Once you perform, you do the best you can do. That's all you can do. And then once it's done, it's done.
The judges see so many different performances. I mean, I know it's important to stand out, but I feel like it's probably easy to put so much pressure on yourself. This is obviously your moment. This is the biggest deal in the world to you right now. But these judges are seeing so many people. And luckily, I think as much as Hollywood Week is grueling, you kind of have the advantage of there still being so many people left and so many places left. As opposed to, say, I know that Hawaii is going to be a different story, but for right now, they can still put through several dozen people. So if you manage to be good enough where you're not pitchy, you don't forget your words, if you can just cut through the noise of any of those things going wrong, you're probably going to be okay.
And I think strategy, it's hard to say strategy because it's a reality television singing show. There's not really much of a strategy, but it is kind of a marathon, not a sprint. If you can just do the job and do the best you can do, that's how I ended up making top 40. That's the only way I ended up cracking it was I tried just not to exhaust myself, not overdo it, do what you can do, and then let it go. Once the performance is done, you're done. And if you
Hmm.
get a chance to perform again, great. You know,
What was the judges' feedback from your duet?
so the chemistry read. That was the
Yeah.
biggest thing for us. There was a little mistake. I think Alyssa came in a little late on her words. I remember that being something. It didn't at the time. It didn't seem like it was a grave mistake. Um, the feedback was generally positive, which felt nice, but also felt kind of weird. Because if it's all positive, then you think maybe there's like a little American Idol twist where you're gonna end up getting voted off, even though all your feedback was positive. Because that happens. Um, so I remember that going through our heads, but I felt good walking off the stage.
Had they not told you right away whether or not you'd be making it through?
No, so that was we had to wait again. We had to wait again till the end of uh, the duets that like our group of duets, and they
Uh-huh.
lined us all up in the hallway and then walked us through. Um, and I remember standing next to Alyssa, and the 2 of us are standing there on our mark at the center of the stage, and They go, Alyssa, step forward. And in my line, the people who had stepped forward had been the people who had continued on. So I thought, I was like, all right, that's it. They said, Alyssa, you're going home. And they were like, Jeb, you're still going. And I remember like I was relieved that I had made it through. Like I won't say that I wasn't happy because I was obviously, but I did feel really like my heart hurt for
Yeah.
Alyssa. I think that she's incredibly talented. And I don't think, but that's I guess that's what I mean is it's not just about talent.
Hmm.
Sometimes I don't it just that one little mistake that doesn't seem like it's a great mistake that probably was the difference maker.
It's a hard position to be in. I mean, I think that your sort of mentality where it's like, yes, it's a competition, but we're not here to be brutally competitive with each other, where you're just kind of there to do your own thing. And then it's kind of easy to get wrapped up in like you invested your time with this other person to make this performance great, and it worked for you, but it didn't work for her, so that takes a toll on you for a little bit.
I was definitely in my head about it for a little while. Just because, you know, you it was so important to build that chemistry, but along with that, you like you said, you invest your time with this person. You want both of you, you're so worried about making the duet successful that you don't think about what happens when one of you goes home and one of you doesn't. And it stings because you want your duet partner to make it through. Because that's the success, right? That's the
Yeah.
modicum of success is both of us are going to make it through to the other side, and then only one of us does. And I'm not on. Obviously, I'm not unhappy that it was me. I'm glad that I made it through, and I got to go experience the later rounds. But in that moment, you just gutted,
Yeah.
and then you got to go give an interview about it, and you don't know what to say because obviously the burning question on the producer's lips when they go pull you for an interview is, well, how do you feel about it? And
Right.
you're still in shock.
Yeah. I know that I talked to someone from season 19, and I'm guessing that they've done this every year, but like they have two aisles, and the person that goes through walks down one aisle, the person that doesn't go through walks down the other aisle,
Yeah.
which is also hard visually to take in amidst all the other shock that you're feeling.
Well, and then once you get to the end of that aisle, at least in my season, so at least in my season, what happened is you would go down your aisle, and then there would be an immediate interview party
Right.
right there.
Right.
So you'd open that door and immediately walk into an interview. And likewise with that person that walks out the other door. Two very different vibes. And they're only about 7 feet from one another. So I can hear the interview questions they're asking her. I can hear the interview questions. Like she can hear what they're asking me. And it's hard because you want to be excited for yourself, but that's your friend. That's somebody you just got up there and you obviously have to build some sort of connection if it's gonna read on stage and you're gonna perform together. So that's my friend, and you got to listen to her. Get asked all these questions about getting voted off, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But you're also happy for yourself. It's this very odd
Yeah,
feeling.
for sure. Tell me about some standout duets if you remember anybody from sitting in the audience that you watched.
A guy named Adam Curry. And
Hmm.
that's what like the thing that blows my mind, and the thing that I love about the concept for your podcast is like there are so many incredibly talented people that that I watch and I said, oh my god, how could you ever like find these people? And you're blown away, and then they don't get aired.
Right.
And then it's like it's not a knock on anybody that got aired. Like there's a reason the people who got aired got aired. There's so many of us that it's hard to tell all these stories, but at the same time, like this guy Adam Curry, I think everybody should look him up on social media because he's the real deal. I think it might have been another guy named Eddie Irwin, and they were
Hmm.
both really good guitar players, and they had these voices that just were perfect together. So that would probably be Evan Kruiga and Dylan James, also incredible duet. And watching these people go home, I remember I had this thought. I watched Stefan Sylvester go home, and I turned to somebody sitting next to me and I just said out loud, I forget who was sitting next to me, but I turned and I just said, if he's going home, there's absolutely no way that I'm staying. I was like, he is incredible. There's absolutely no way if I'm going home, like if he's going home, I'm going home. That's the only way in my mind that it happens. And
Hmm.
that's the other thing that I think about a lot is there's so much B-roll and so many interviews that I filmed. There has got to be like at least 10 hours of footage of me. I'd love to see. I'd love to see some of these other people's because some of these people are like the coolest people you'll ever meet. And then they just like I said, it's like it's not a knock to the people who got aired. Obviously, there's a reason they're on TV. Like they're incredible, and there's a reason they're there. The cast producers do an incredible job on the show, but the amount of people who didn't get aired that are just unreal.
I'm always so curious. Like I love learning about it, and especially now that you're my first guest from season 18, there's some things that are new. Like it's pre-COVID, so obviously there was a lot less restrictions, and the audition process was different. Hollywood Week, it was the first time that they had changed things up, and I think there was a lot more that they did because there were 3 rounds of Hollywood instead of two on top of Hawaii. So like there was just a lot more going on, I think, your year for reasons that made sense. There's COVID and everything, but there was another round, like a solo round, I think before Hawaii, right?
Yes,
After duet
yes,
round.
and I think it added to the stress kind of. I would say, like we were talking about, like the lack of sleep and like just the go 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 of everything. Well, we got back to the hotel after all the duet people got cut, and groups starting to get a little smaller. You're starting to miss people's faces. You're starting to realize you get there the first day, and the group just slowly over the course of the week, you end up standing there, and they lined us all up they put us all online, and they had boards and markers on the easels, and they said sign your name below a song, no more than two people, or no more than three people to a song, and you will do a solo performance tomorrow. And I remember I was dog tired. I had no voice. My voice was starting to go on me. Um, and I remember I had a Sharpie in my pocket. So I just whipped the Sharpie out to try to save time. And I ran like hell. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life.
Wow.
And I saw the first song that I wanted to do was Talk by Khalid. Um, and it was taken. So I grabbed Rocket Man by Elton John. I was like, that's the one. And I was the one person who did Rocket Man. I ended up being the one person who chose it. And that one aired briefly too. But the craziest thing was getting to perform with the band. Getting to
Hmm.
perform with that band for the first time. And I said it in my interview. They asked me like about making it that far. And I was like, the coolest thing about making it this far is like that's a 9-piece band in there. And Chris Pooley is the greatest music director, music supervisor ever. He is so like you can tell he's one of those people that like when you meet them, like you can tell his brain, like he's a genius. His brain's moving a million miles an hour, but he's able to break it down to your level, and it's nice.
Yeah.
He's so adaptable and he's so easy to work with, but he's also just a genius.
I mean, just having to work with that many artists in such a short period of time, which he orchestrates. Obviously, you said 9-piece band, but I mean, he is the leader for so many contestants in such a short period of time to knock out all those songs. Obviously, that they do have a limit. They're not learning. I think I'm guessing it's how this worked in your season, but the way it worked in season 20 and I think 19 is if you wanted to do an original song that last round, you couldn't play with a band because they didn't want them to have to learn it, but
Yes,
then you could do,
same rule.
yeah. So even though it's a limited song pool, I mean, you're still having to work with so many contestants in such a short period of time.
And they would do key changes as well, which I
Uh-huh.
think that adds to the variety of it too. Is like
Yeah.
you might do the same song 4 times, but it might be in 4 different keys.
And I'm guessing you got a rehearsal with them before the performance.
I got to play with a keyboard player the night before. I got to play with one of the accompanists and have a vocal coach listen.
Uh-huh.
That morning, I had 2 passes.
Uh-huh.
I had one mic check to check levels with the band, and then I ran through the song 1 time with the band, and that was it.
Gotcha.
And then we were going to do it live.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I remember calling my cousin, the one that I write with. I called him uh, before the performance, and I was in tears. I didn't. I was like, my voice is shot. I've given it everything I have. I was like, I've come so far. I really wanted to make it through the like. I wanted to complete Hollywood Week. I wanted to be, come out on top. But I was like, I don't know if it's gonna happen. And I felt so defeated. And then I walked out on stage and we did the performance. And before I knew it, it was done. And Katie was standing up clapping.
Wow.
And that was the first time they had allowed families to watch, which was cool.
Yeah.
The families got to be, so it was the biggest crowd we had had. And I like, I remember Katie standing up and the fact that she did that. I was like, even if I go home here, I'll always have the fact that Katy Perry gave me a standing ovation. Like nobody will take that away from me.
No.
I was like, so you know what? Whatever happens, happens.
So, do you remember any standout solos from that round from the audience perspective?
Dylan James wowed every time he was on stage. Julia Gargano wowed every time she was on stage. Sophia Wackerman, I am convinced that she was born specifically to perform and be on stage and sing. I've never seen somebody more at home. All the people that like uh, that you talk about being standouts from that season. There's a reason they're standouts from that season. They are just the best of the best, and watching them is crazy.
Now, the judges did not give feedback that round. Is that correct?
Not specific feedback, no. Very kind of, they just were like, if it was something glaring, like I forget, I don't remember who it was. Somebody forgot their lyrics entirely. So obviously things like that were addressed. But generally no feedback, no. And I think it led to the suspense later on.
I want to come back to way earlier when you said that Luke Bryan gave you and a group of people advice. At what point did that happen?
So that happened after the duet round.
Oh, okay.
Right before we started doing solos. I think he noticed everybody was dog tired. And I just remember there's about 3 or 4 of us sitting there, and we were sitting in the auditorium. And I remember he just kind of got up from his chair, and we were on like a 15-minute break.
Uh huh.
And this just is a testament to the kind of guy that he is. He just was kind of walking around asking everybody how they were doing.
Yeah.
And he looked at us and he was like, "You guys doing okay?" And we were like, "Yeah, we're kind of tired." He's like, "That's part of it." He's like, that's nobody thinks about it as part of the job. Everybody sees the glamorous bits, but going on tour, pushing yourself, it's a job that requires, it's not just about singing. It's physically taxing. You got to want it. And, you know, as long as you love what you're doing, it's always going to be worth it. And like, I just remember thinking about that, like how much I love doing it. And kind of like we said earlier, like if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it might have been grueling, but that's just the perspective that he put in. And I appreciate that perspective. And I know that it comes from a very real place of him being in the music industry for as long as he's been in it. And just saying like, it's part of the job, and you'll make it through, because this is what, obviously you love what you're doing enough to go through it. So just keep that in your heart and keep that at the forefront, and you'll always be successful, because you'll push yourself, because you know how bad you want it.
I saw a clip of him recently. He was on stage and he fell, but he did not miss a note. Like, he was on stage on tour. I don't know if you saw that, but he had the microphone. He was like, he didn't miss a beat.
No, that's a performer, man. I'm telling you, like, that's, like I said, that's that experience. That's that industry experience. Like, he's a real deal.
Yeah. At any point, did you get to meet or work with Bobby Bones, the mentor?
I did. Bobby and I actually went paddleboarding together.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I was the only contestant. Yeah. So once we kind of start talking about Hawaii, I'll kind of give a little bit of insight to Hawaii. Obviously, there are producer phone calls between some of the rounds where they kind of touch base with you, see what songs you're thinking about singing, and they asked me who I had become friends with. And at that point, Dylan James and I had become pretty good friends. And I remember Dylan and I had made jokes in LA once we had made it through and knew that we were going to Hawaii. We were like, "Oh, let's go surfing. Like, let's ask the producers if we can go surfing, and let them film it for content." And we mentioned it, and I got to Hawaii, and I remember one of the producers who's been with the show for a really long time. He pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, we didn't get surfing lessons." He was like, "But would you like to go paddleboarding with Bobby? And I was like,
Wow.
yeah. I was like, absolutely, I
Yeah.
want to go paddle. Like, yeah, I want to go paddle. There's a picture of it on my Instagram somewhere. They pulled me on a day that we were doing B-roll, gave me a life jacket, and then me and like I got to shake Bobby's hand. I had talked to him. The first time I talked to him was Hollywood Week before finals round. They took a group of us and kind of one by one filmed a little interview segment with Bobby.
Hmm.
But that to me, like that was more of a you show up, you give the interview, you just answer the questions. I didn't really get to like actually have a one-on-one conversation. Like there was time during the setup that Bobby and I were just standing there where he and I had an actual conversation and we got to
Hmm.
actually talk. And I remember like him pointing out, he's like, I don't have a mic on right now. He's like, I haven't even mic'd me yet. He's like, I'm telling you straight up, like, like this is it's hard, but you're making you're making a name for yourself. You know what I mean? He's like, you're taking chances, you're putting yourself out there on stage. He was giving me kind of advice along the lines of like being confident. That's
Hmm.
the thing that I struggled with. I think if I were to ever go back on the show, which I don't know if I ever will, but I'm definitely open to it now that I have grown a lot as an artist. Because I do feel like that might have been the biggest hindrance, I think, with the show that I would love if I could go back and I don't know if I do it differently because I love the people that I met and I loved the producers that I worked with. I loved everybody that I met and encountered on the show. I really did, which I think is rare. I think that's rare to
Hmm.
like love everybody that you're working with.
Yeah.
But if I were to go back, I would be more sure of myself as an artist and just more confident
Hmm.
because even that was getting to go paddleboarding and just me and Bobby talking about, just be sure of yourself. You're the one that's out here setting up on stage in front of all these people. Be confident. You made it this far, and so that was nice to hear. He's a good guy.
He performs like in a comedy band, and then other than that, I
He
don't
was
know
in
if
a
he's
boy band, wasn't he? Like back in the day.
was he?
I think don't quote me on that, but I do believe there was a boy band at one point with Bobby Bones in
Oh wow. Well, I mean, he definitely knows what it takes to connect with people. I think he was a really unique choice for a mentor because
it.
even
He's
if he's
so he's
not,
so personable.
yeah, I think it was a nice refresher because they had record execs as mentors all the time before, and to be a radio host who talks with artists, who understands artists from interviewing them, who has been on the road, even if it's in who cares if it's a comedy band, he's still on stage, he knows what it's like to work a crowd.
It's still
And
the industry.
yeah, no, I think that he was a great choice for a mentor. I was bummed
I
when he
do
didn't
too.
come back, but I think it's man, I am very jealous that you got to go paddleboarding with Bobby Bones. I must say
It was
that.
it was one of the coolest things I've done. It was sick. My first time paddleboarding ended up falling in the water with a microphone on. It was great. It was great. Bobby had a field day with that.
You're in top 40 at this point. That's insane. Look how far you've come, and you're one step away from 20. And even if you don't make it, which I know you didn't, but at the same time, you're probably thinking like, "What the hell? Look how far I've come already."
I think that goes back to the mentality that I had from the beginning that every new step that we took, like at Hollywood Week, then all the way to top 40, it all started on just me going to go audition for this affiliate contest on a whim.
You took a chance.
So I took one chance and ended up in Hawaii filming American Idol, being in the top 40, performing in front of a couple thousand people at Alani, reaching my hand out off the front of the stage and getting grabbed and pulled in and stuff. It's like, are there things that I wish I could go back and maybe choose? Like, I think what got me the biggest critique I heard from the judges was my song choice. So if I could go back and maybe pick a different song, maybe things would be different, and maybe I would have been in the top 20 because they cut down to 20 that year.
Right.
Um, but maybe it wasn't in the cards. It was COVID hit right after we got back, and so everybody that was in LA ended up being robbed of that live show experience, and ended up having to adapt and do the idol at home. And so, in a lot of ways, I'm very fortunate that my journey ended on that high note. Because I
Yeah.
remember talking to some of my, like I said, Dylan and I got really close. And I remember texting with Dylan when Dylan first went to LA for the live shows. And then they all got quarantined. And I was like, what's going to happen? And he was like, we don't even know. Because nobody knew what to do at that point. Nobody knew how to handle that. So, the stress of doing Idol at home and not getting that experience of getting to do the actual live shows and perform. Because I think it's really hard to deliver American Idol via Idol at home. Not that those contestants didn't do a fantastic job, but there's just something about that artist being in that room with the band live, you know, performing with an audience in there. And so it's like, you know, my friends got robbed of that. And I don't think they got their full Idol experience. And so I'm okay. I'm okay with how that season ended for me. Not saying that I would never go back on the show or anything like that, but like I would be open to that because I know a lot more about myself as an artist now. But that doesn't mean that in no way means that I'm very happy with how that journey ended on that specific trip for me.
Yeah, you answered my question very thoroughly. It's exactly what I was wondering is were you glad that it ended when it did? Because I think that everything changed when COVID hit. And I think that what's sad is that that season was so promising. And again, the contestants killed it. You can't deny that they delivered the vocals from home, but what you can admit is that the show was not the same when they
Right.
had to do it from home.
No, I fully agree. I think, yeah, I mean, it's not a knock. Again, it's not a knock on the people who were there. Obviously, they're in that position because they're incredibly talented, but it wasn't the same as it had been in the past and as it has been since.
Right. And to be fair, like I think it was still admirable that the production team wanted to keep going. I can't imagine what it took even to just put those four shows together. And what sucks is that we at home probably had this feeling of like, oh my God, like, we only get four shows and this is just, it's not American Idol. But for those people that had to put that show together, I mean,
It's
think about
backbreaking work.
think about Chris Pooley. He had to record tracks and then send it to all those people. The judges having to watch the performances and deliver the critiques, and Bobby and Ryan having to do their work from home. All the producer calls. It took so much from everybody, and the toll that it took, you know, it didn't really allow the contestants to stop and smell the roses because there weren't really any roses to smell. There was really just stress to be had on top of a world that was scary to live in.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're navigating the challenges of at the time COVID being very new and very unfamiliar and very scary because nobody knew what it was. And so on top of dealing with that, it's easy to complain and say, "Oh, we only got four shows," or "Oh, it's not American Idol anymore." But it's once you acknowledge the amount of backbreaking work that it took from people to like make that even those four shows happen and to do it as seamlessly and as well as they did it, kudos to the production team. It's a fantastic production team, and they know what they're doing because they've done it for a long time. But yeah, I mean the amount of sheer work that it took cannot go understated.
Well, they had to teach themselves a lot. I mean, because they knew what they were doing in a TV production facility, but they had to learn how to make things work that they had never done before. I mean, they actually, I think if I read correctly, made history with how they produced the finale because the other shows were pre-recorded. It was just impossible to do live, but they wanted to deliver the results live, coast to coast, so everybody could watch across all time zones. So they had satellite trucks, and they managed to have everybody on a live feed broadcasting to all 50 states and everything at once. So again, I mean, as much as it was not the same for the viewers, what they pulled off in that amount of time is something that it just is a testament to what this crew can do.
I fully agree.
So back to Hawaii, what was your song?
I did "Sex on Fire" by Kings of Leon. Kings of Leon have been a favorite band of mine for as long as I can remember. So it felt only right. It at the time it felt like a fantastic choice. I had originally suggested doing "This Love" by Maroon 5. That was originally I said I told the producers I said that's what I want to do, and they said what are some other choices? Because they make you do a top three list, and so they read over my top three list and they said no, we want you to do "Sex on Fire." And I said, okay. And like I said, there's a lot of time for me to like sit there and I can second guess it. I could easily second guess it. And I could just as easily say, well, I could have stood my ground and said, no, I'm doing this love. But I did second part because I love the band, I love the song, and the song choice ended up being my undoing. And that's okay. Like I have to live with that. You can't sit there and go back and forth. But I do wonder if it would have turned out any differently if I'd have done a different song. I will always wonder that.
Yeah, of course, of course. But I mean, was it fun just being on stage with the crowd? I mean, that.
I guess that's what I mean. Like the rehearsal process with the band, like going to this, they had a separate hotel because they didn't want to give away that we were filming Idol. A separate hotel that they commuted us to, big ballroom with the whole band, backup singers, the whole nine. Like the first time I heard myself do the song with the band, I said, even if I get voted off, this experience as a whole has just been. And then you walk out and you're performing for like 2 or 3 thousand people, and there's nothing like that. There is nothing like that in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even though it ended right there for me. Like I have no complaints. I can't have any type of complaint about that.
What was the Green Mile feedback when you found out you were going home?
Katie told me that I was a Tom Hanks type person that everybody loves to talk to and to get to know, and that they know that I'm a sweet guy, which was nice to hear because I had made a point. I had seen people on the show be very unkind to the crew, be very unkind to producers, to other contestants, have an ego about them. Um, it seemed like they were a little bit above other people. You know what I mean? Like having a really kind of just very self-centered attitude, and I saw that and I said that I never wanted to be that kind of person. Um, and so I made a point to be good to the crew and to my fellow contestants and to the judges. And so to hear that feedback was good. But then she goes, but you know, that song wasn't you.
Hmm.
You know, she said you showed up in your suit because I wore a suit because I always wear suits. Which again, maybe not the best choice, but she said you showed up in your suit and it the song came out of your mouth and it didn't sound bad, but it wasn't you. And I think that's a valid critique. And that's why, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder if it would have been different if I'd have chosen a different song. But I'm not unhappy with the work that I did. Um, she kind of led the charge on that. Luke and Lionel just kind of agreed and said, you know, it wasn't a strong choice. And that's what I remember Luke said, it's not the right choice. And unfortunately, at this point in the competition, that's the type of stuff that it's going to come down to. And I respect that because it's just you get down to that wire. You're cutting down from 40 to 20. Half of the
Right.
people there got to go home. So,
Right.
you know, you can nitpick it all day and wonder if you could do things differently. But like Luke said, it's just at that level in the competition, any little thing. Lionel also, he gave me a hug when I left and he told me, he said we wouldn't be sending you away if we didn't think that you had the ability to come back better and
Hmm.
to be a better artist. And that's something that stuck with me for the rest of my performing career.
I know you mentioned that you would consider going back, potentially in the future. Like, it sounds like there's been a lot that's changed for you. Is there really, I mean, is there any one thing in particular that you could point to that you would do differently going on the show again, or do you think it's just a kind of a collection of lessons that you learned?
I just think it's being more confident, more sure of myself, more sure in my abilities. I just wasn't very confident. I didn't know who I was as an artist because I hadn't really taken the time to perform as an artist and get to know who I was. I took advantage of the opportunity that was presented to me to go on Idol, and maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I wasn't ready as an artist. Another big part of it, when I was on Idol, I recently just graduated U.S. Army boot camp, so I'm about 45 pounds lighter. But I'm actually about 55 pounds lighter than I was on the show. So I think that actually adds to the physical confidence factor a little bit as well.
Wow.
Feeling a little more sure of myself in that regard.
Uh-huh.
So things like that. I just think being more comfortable in my skin and more comfortable as an artist would be something that I should think about.
Hmm. Well, gosh, it was almost 3 years ago. I mean, when you filmed fall
Yeah,
2019, so that's a lot of time for anybody to grow and to let their life experiences help them as they continue on in their artistic journey. And I think that whether or not you go back to American Idol, whatever you continue to do, this will still be a part of your life that you'll never forget because you had a chance to be on such a big stage and share that moment with so many people.
absolutely.
So I want to hear you sing, man. And I know you have a guitar with you. I'm really excited, and I want to hear what you're gonna sing, why you want to sing this song.
So I have my co-writer in the room with me. He's been kind of sitting in on the interview.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I
What's
told
going
him
on, Brock?
I told him I was gonna be on the show, and he was really excited. So um, it's a song that we wrote. It's the single off of our EP. We got some more stuff coming out in the works, but
Uh-huh.
this one right here is the single off our first EP. It's a song that we wrote that it was that song that I told you didn't it baffled us. It took about 2 weeks for us to figure out how to take that second verse, and but when we found it, we knew it was a single.
Mm-hmm.
If you go check it out on Spotify, it's got some cool string arrangements that my engineer did on it, and
Yeah.
it's called "I Do."
Cool.
I look for all the reasons to hide the way I feel. But if you look into my eyes, you'll know that it is real. Spill my heart onto my sleeve. It's turning red now. Try to open up my mouth, it's so shut. I don't want to spend another night waiting on you to pick that phone up. I don't want to waste my time. Want to know if you feel the same as I do, as I do, as I do, as I do. I search for all the answers for what is right and wrong. I try to figure it out. Should I write? Should I call? I could sit here all night long. Would you care at all? I don't want to spend another night waiting on you to pick that phone up. I don't want to waste my time. Want to know if you feel the same as I do, as I do, as I do, as I do, as I do.
Wow.
Thank you.
That was cool, man.
Thank you.
So, what does it feel like when you finally know that something's working? You said you were kind of stuck on it, and then like you kind of had this arrangement come through and finishing a song and knowing that it's perfect.
I think the conversations back and forth between me and Brock have always kind of been like, I wonder if it's good to us or if it's good to other people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I know that's probably a very common thing among songwriters, but I remember when we went to the studio, this song was not done. It really wasn't even started. I'm looking over him for time reference, but I don't even know if we had started on the song when we had another song that we were tracking in the studio because I had this idea that I was gonna be fucking Prince and I was gonna record every single instrument on the album. I like had this idea. I was like, it's gonna be all me. I'm gonna record all the keys. So we're working on that and had a really rough day of recording drums. Um, and my head hurt because I had drums blasting my ears all day. We left the studio. We were kind of frustrated because the song wasn't working. And I grabbed the guitar and I kind of started playing that. I just kind of was messing around with that chord progression. He goes, I like that. Is that
Uh-huh.
ours? And I was like, I mean, yeah, I've been kind of working on it. Start talking about concept, kind of getting the lyrics working. And we got the first verse done, no chorus yet.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout that week in the studio, working on it little by little. And finally, we were looking for the next song we were going to do on the album. And I said, well, I'd love to do this one, but we don't have it done. So we, on lunch at the studio, like we were on a break at the studio, we finished the song and we tracked it that day. And then, like I said, we had that moment where we were like, we loved the song. We immediately were like, it worked. Like you said, we had that moment where it's like, oh, it's working now. And
Yeah.
it felt amazing. And then then we had the revelation. We were like, is it good to us or will it be good to other people? And then we left, came back the next day to hear the mix, the preliminary mix. And my engineer, Jason, who is incredible, Jason goes, hey man, I came back up to the studio after dinner last night. He was like, I added something. He's like, you just tell me if you like it. If you like it, we'll keep it. If you don't, we'll take it out. And he's an incredible musician in his own right. He added in this string arrangement that was just gorgeous.
Mm.
And I remember listening to it on the studio monitors, and Brock and I looked at each other, and I was like, "This is the real deal. Like, I think this is going to be good to other people."
Wow. Well, I'm dying to hear it now. Like I don't know, man. If you want to send me any, even just like a clip of the studio version to play at the end, because I would love people to just hear that as well.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
they heard hearing it live. I love hearing live music even over Zoom because I feel like I can just kind of feel the presence of you as an artist.
Absolutely.
But I'm dying to hear that arrangement because there is a difference between acoustic and the recording, but then each song has its own thing going on. So this is just one of them, but maybe for this the strings, and then for some other song there might be something else on each track that's like, oh, for this song it's the way the vocals cut through, for this song it's the drums, or I'm sure that you really find a little highlight of each track, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another song on that album that jumps out to me, we did, it's called Crown. And that honestly, as a songwriter, that's probably my favorite song on the album. I do became the single just because I do was the single. The second we heard it, we said that's the single when we sequenced it. But Crown, we did a million different ways. Nothing was working until we set up two mics and I did it as a live take. I did it Tyler Childers live at Red Barn radio style, just two microphones, my voice, and an acoustic guitar, and it worked. And then for some of the other songs, it worked really well with a full band. And so it just, each song, yeah, definitely just had its own thing, its own process, it evolved into its own thing. And that's the thing that I love about writing with Brock and working with Jason as an engineer is they let the song breathe. They let the song have its own path.
See, I think the question that you had about, does it sound good to us or will it sound good to other people? I think, obviously you can't promise that someone's going to love something because art is subjective, but you've done everything that you can as the artist to make it the best that you can. And I think that results in the listener knowing that you've put your all into something and they can tell that you've put your all into something. So to me, I feel like when you know something is good, the listener's going to know too. If they're on board with you, they're like, yeah, okay, this is good. We can tell that this is an artist who cares about what they're doing, and it comes across that you care about your craft, right? And it's whether it's the lyrics or the sound, the melody, whatever. Even if you're someone who doesn't know that much about music, I feel like if somebody's a fan of you, they connect with the music and they can tell that there's a lot of effort being put into it.
I think that goes back to earlier we were talking about like if you don't feel it yourself, how can somebody else feel it?
Right.
And that was something that every time I would ask that question, that's a response that Brock had kind of was like, well, if it means something to us, right? And that's like every song that we did, we named the EP Confessions because it was every song that we wrote was very much real to us. Like it was real stories. They're about real people. When I play that song, that's about a real person. Every song on that album is about a real person or a real thing that happened. And so if it's real to us and we feel something when we write it and we feel something when we sing it, you're going to feel something when you listen to it. And that's my objective, is just to tell that story and to have somebody feel something.
And that's what makes a good song, because let's be honest, there's a million songs, that are love songs, or there's so many songs that are about feeling a certain way, whether it's about a person or about just a certain feeling that we have. But being able to acknowledge, like, yeah, this is real. Like, I'm going to admit very wholeheartedly that it's about a person, even if I'm not naming who they are. Like, just owning that, like, owning what this means. Like, I feel like that's the difference between like sitting in a coffee shop, hearing a song and being like, oh, that's just some random song, or actually putting in your headphones and wanting to really take in a piece of music and
Yeah.
understand what it's about, who is writing it, why are they writing it, who's it about, what story are they trying to tell.
And I think that comes from my admiration of songwriters like Jason Isbell immediately jumps out to mind. Like his songs, you may not know who exactly they're about or what exactly they're about, like precisely, but it's real to him. You feel every word that he sings or every word that he says. So it's like that to me, you hit the nail on the head. Like it's you're making a song for somebody to put their headphones on and really take in what it means. And maybe not even what it means to me, but what it means to them. Like what it like it can it my song could mean something to me, but mean something completely different to somebody else, and that's fine. Like that's what it's meant to do.
Even if we're talking mainstream, like Ed Sheeran, I mean, I don't know if you know
Yes.
Supermarket Flowers. That song
Yes.
is it's so, I mean, maybe it's the description, maybe it's the specificity, but like, you listen to it and you know that it means something. He's not just looking to write a pop hit, which he has plenty of,
Right.
but he wants you to feel the heartbreak he feels in that song.
And like each listener can have a different reaction to it too, is the great thing. Like depending on your experience with heartbreak, like depending on what those words mean to you and your life experience, it could be completely different to you than it is to me, but our experience is still validated.
Right.
That's what's so cool about it.
Yeah. This has been a real pleasure, man. I'm invested. I want to keep listening to the music. I'd love to come see you live someday, meet you in person. I feel like
Absolutely, dude.
this has been so great, and I want you to let people know where they can also follow along online so that they can stay invested as well, or if they want to come see you so that they can get the experience themselves.
We're playing a lot right now on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, also in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. My next show is at a place called the Whiskey Bar in Pasco Strand, Mississippi. That's coming up. Like I said, I just got back from basic training, so I'm still lining up the dates. But what's great is I have my social media at Jeb V Music on Instagram, Jeb Bonnerie on Facebook. My Same on Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp, Amazon. I got TikTok at Jeb V Music as well. So now that I'm back from basic, I'm going to be kind of bumping up that social media presence again. It was a little tough to do at the
Yeah.
time, but now that I'm back, everybody can come check that out. We got some, not supposed to talk about it, but I got some new music in the works. I'll go ahead and I'll let that be an American Idol unaired exclusive.
Oh man, I'm
We got
honored.
we got I know. We got some new music coming down the pipe. A new album, hopefully, that's in the works. So that'll be on the horizon for everybody to listen to. And I think it's gonna be even better than the first one.
Wow.
It's gonna be made with a lot of energy and a lot of love. So
Man. Any parting words from you, Jeb, or even Brock, if you want to chime in, just any
Brock's
parting.
been sitting the whole interview. Brock, you got anything? He's shaking his head. He's shaking his head. But for anybody listening to the show, like I think it's one thing to watch the show and to get the story from the clips that they air. But I think that this show is really great in the way that you can sit there and really understand how the show works and how the show functions. And for in a season, you may see 40 people get aired, 50 people get aired, 800 incredible people that I sat in a room with in LA. So, like, listen to independent artists. Just because they don't have major label support, like, it doesn't mean they're any less valid. So I think that it's like you can see so much great art and hear so many great voices. And I learned that being in that room at Idol. So my parting words would just be listen to a lot of music. Like, listen to a lot of music, and not just necessarily the stuff that like is easily accessible. Go find artists. Go find people that speak to you because their stories are valid.
Well, you know what, Jeb, it's been such a pleasure. And guys, if you enjoyed this conversation, if you have not already, please subscribe to American Idol Unaired. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you may be listening, you can also watch these interviews on YouTube. Just type in American Idol Unaired. And as we said, this is our first conversation with the season 18 contestant, but we have got so many with contestants from season 20, the most recent season. We're doing some from season 19. We've got aired exceptions, which are contestants who were actually aired on the show, people behind the scenes at American Idol. So for all things American Idol, you can go there. You can follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Idol Unaired Podcast. Jeb, thank you so much for being a part of American Idol
Thank you for
Unaired.
having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
Hey everyone, Bennett here, and before you go, as I mentioned earlier in this interview, I wanted to hear a little snippet of I Do, the studio version, so here it is.
I don't want to waste my time, want to know if you feel the same as I do, as I do, as I do. As I do, I search for all the answers for what is right and wrong. I try to figure it out. Should I write? Should I call? I could sit here all night long. Would you care at all? I don't want to spend another night waiting on you to pick that phone up. I don't want to waste my time. Want to know if you feel the same as I do, as I do, as I do, as I do, as I do.